Hi, it is Midweek Extra. I am Josh Sexton. I'm joined today by Gareth, Roberts, Mike Kearney and Dan Austin to react to the win over Brighton in the League Cup and look ahead a little bit to Brighton again at the weekend. But first of all, we are brought to you in association with Green King Sport. If you use the Green King app, you can get 10% off drinks in any Green King pub while live sport is on the telly. You can also find your nearest Green King boozer in the app or online. But let's get straight into the game from last night, Gareth, and we'll start with the teams, with the lineups beforehand. Brighton make 8 changes from their draw with Wolves at the weekend. Liverpool make the same amount from their draw with Arsenal. I think probably the biggest surprise in terms of team selection was seeing Andy Robertson still in the team, but besides that, no great shocks, you wouldn't say?
No, I mean, with Robertson, straight away you're thinking, aren't you, does that then mean that he's sort of like dropped out of favour a little bit and it's going to be Tsimikas starting at the weekend, or Gomez? Obviously has struggled a little bit, obviously done for the goal against Arsenal, a mistake against Chelsea as well. And obviously then that sparks all the chat about has his legs gone and he's 30 now and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so it may well mean that. We'll see. But yeah, in terms of the side, obviously, both sides, no shock. This is what Premier League clubs do with this competition. But you know what, I kind of enjoy it for what it is now. It felt like when we were doing shows back when I was involved, we were regularly talking about like the state of that competition. What's it for? What's the point? Should it be binned? Should there be some way of reviving it, attach a European place, whatever it might be? I've just made me peace with it now, and I enjoyed the match last night. It was great, and I'm a big fan of Tyler Morton, and I've been thinking for ages, when will he get a go? And I thought, well, it's got to be tonight, hasn't it? And then there he was, and obviously he's got, I mean, they can describe it as an assist. It's a pass, isn't it? And then the goal's a bit of a worldie, but nevertheless, it was good to see him there, good to see a few of the other lads, and good to just see that sort of Liverpool could make that many changes. And okay, it wasn't perfect on the night, and there were some mistakes and things like that, but you could still see sort of that it was on a slot, Liverpool, couldn't you? You know what I mean? You could see the patterns of play, you could see the setup, the style, all of those things. And he said himself, didn't he, that it's been good to see all those lads come out, play well, and that tells him now that if he needs to lean on them, and he will do, they're ready to go.
I'll come back to you on this, because I think one of the key things, and I'd mentioned this before the game, I think it was on Talking Reds the other day, that it seemed whenever Quansah and Gomez have played together as the centre-backs, those defensive principles from slot still stay as well. That feels like the thing that's sort of like the identity of Liverpool at the moment, is that it's built on this really solid foundation. And I think you get to see that again last night, and that's where Robertson, I think, does sort of come in handy for that game last night. Is it, of the two left-back options, in terms of the natural left-back options, not including Gomez, he is the more natural defender. And I think him having the armband and stuff last night, him being able to almost command that back four is probably good for him.
Yeah, and look, he's still going to play, isn't he? If some pundit somewhere thinks his legs have gone, well, sound, but, I think it's a bit early for all that chat myself. I mean, getting done by Saka, well, he's not going to be the only defender to be done by him, because he's one of the best players in the league. So, yeah, but it would have been good for him. I mean, that's the other side of the coin, isn't it, on the thinking? Maybe it was just get him back in, get him back on the horse and get him playing well, if you like, to get Arsenal out of his system. And he may well just start at the weekend and, Tsimikas comes on or something like that. Because what I've noticed on the slot as well, I think you can tell that he's really conscious of the minutes everyone's getting. Yeah. He's managing that, and that's a clever thing to do, obviously, with the amount of football we play. So it could be that as well. We're just making assumptions that maybe Tsimikas comes in, but maybe it's, Robertson starts, Tsimikas comes on later on. He seems to like Tsimikas as well, doesn't he? He seems to lean on him a fair bit. I thought it was good as well to see Gomez last night. I mean, I've seen people say, and obviously there was a point where we might have sold him. It seemed like, he was pitched up as a potential make-weight in the Gordon deal, didn't he, with Newcastle? Obviously that didn't happen. And then lots of people I still see some Reds say, maybe we should cash in. I like him. I like him being around the place. I like the fact that he's versatile. And I know from doing stuff with him back in the day that he's an absolutely sound fella. And for me, there's, the more sound fellas you can have in your workplace, the better. And he is one. So I'm sure Slot likes him. I'm sure all the lads at Liverpool like him. And he's shown again last night that if you want to lean on him at any point, he won't let you down.
Yeah, and Dan, just back to the Robertson thing, 'cause it probably has been the sort of main narrative that came off the back of the Arsenal game, really. I think it's like Gareth said, it's probably been overdone to an extent in terms of people questioning whether his legs have fallen off. I think it's pretty clear that he's a footballer who's, past his peak years now, and if you wanted to I guess, be sort of uber critical or nitpicking anyway, he's probably the person you look at in Liverpool's first 11 as it is right now and think that's maybe where Liverpool could look to improve in the not so distant future. But in terms of a footballer who can still contribute to Liverpool, I mean, it's not a sort of litmus test of that last night necessarily, but I think he shows again, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, that he still has loads to offer to Liverpool.
Towards the back end of last season, when things were more difficult from like April onwards or whatever, I thought he was by far Liverpool's best player. He was one of very few that was still doing quite basic things right in terms of like positioning, communicating with people when all their heads seemed to go down and they just felt like everything was coming to an end. There was the game against Sheffield United, was it, when they went 1-0 down and he came on at half time or in second and completely changed it and was just the best player on the pitch by an absolute distance. And that was a game that Liverpool were finding really difficult. So I don't really buy that in the space of a few short months he's now useless and shouldn't be used very often by the manager, which some people seem to have got in their heads. I think even when a team is winning the majority of the time that they play, and by and large playing really well, which Liverpool have been doing since the start of the season, there are still some players that individually mightn't be in like their absolute best condition or form. People have been like having a pretty consistent go at Szoboszlai as well, for example, haven't they, for certainly like the last 6 weeks or something like that. It happens sometimes that players, for whatever reason, they might be in their own heads a little bit, might be carrying something that you either have heard about but then you've forgotten, or you mightn't even actually know. But as long as the other people around them are playing at a high enough level that you can get through it, then it's fine. It's actually pretty rare that you would ever go through, even in Klopp's Liverpool years, and go, absolutely everyone in this 11 is fully on it and playing at their very, very best. Even in the period where they won 26 out of 27, I'm sure if you go back and like listen to things that you would have put out at the time, there'd be games where runs of 3 or 4 where people go, Henderson hasn't been playing that well, or Ronaldo's a little bit off it. Exactly. So I think it's fine. And in a few weeks or maybe the next game, you never know when it is, you'll look at him and think, oh, hasn't he played terrifically well there, and the crossing's really on point and he's kept the right winger really quiet and that sort of stuff. So I don't think it's like a huge concern. And although the manager is definitely clearly happy to use Tsimikas quite regularly, he's still picking Robertson like in loads of the games, so I don't think he's massively concerned either. And the fact that he's been through so many different things with Liverpool, winning every single trophy that he possibly can win, but also at least 2 seasons where they've been pretty garbage for a lot of it. I think is really useful experience as well, because there'll be a point of the season where Liverpool as a collective find it harder, and they've won 12 out of 14 or something so far, but there'll be 3 games in a row where they don't win or something like that at some point, 2 draws and a loss, just because it happens. Players like him who are very reliable characters and generally very steady performers will be really valuable then.
Yeah, and this is the thing with Robertson, Mike. Like you don't really know in terms of the way the manager's thinking about it. And Gareth mentioned before that maybe the manager is taking him out the firing line a little bit. I actually almost think it works in terms of the pattern of the games that they've got coming up, where like you can imagine a scenario in which the manager knew he was going with a much changed lineup last night. Again, I mentioned Robertson sort of being the more defensive of the 2 fullbacks, but also a game where Brighton may well have more of the ball just by virtue of the fact that Liverpool have made loads of changes and it's away at Brighton, and Brighton are a good side who you see last night do have relative depth as well. At the weekend, it being at Anfield, you'd imagine that Liverpool are expecting to have a lot more of the ball there, and I don't think I'm underestimating Brighton by too much of a long chalk to say that. And then Leverkusen on Tuesday is going to present a completely different challenge, because Leverkusen have been a top team in Europe for about 18 months now. So I think it almost works in the pattern of the games. Like the manager has just proven again that he is looking to manage those minutes and doing a pretty good job of it.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it, when you've got you want to make changes, but then you need to sort of keep a level of experience on the pitch. And yesterday we were dropping down from second choice goalkeeper to third choice, so you need a defence in front of him that's going to help him as much as he didn't need help. And at the end, he made a fantastic save in the game himself. But to have a leader in front of him like Robertson. You know, like Quansah not really played at all this season. Really, he's come off at half time in the Ipswich and got the other League Cup game. So even though he's still young, he's relatively experienced in compared to the goalie behind him. Robertson's maybe being treated a bit more like a. I don't know. I think it could be a bit of both of getting out of the system, as Robbo said, and wanting to just have that experience there. You know, Gomez is next to him. That defence, even though youngish, you know, it has a relative amount of experience in it while making changes, which has been the blessing. You know, it was 8 changes. You don't want to make 11 and then maybe lose a bit of momentum going into Brighton again, and then you know it's every 3 days, 4 days at this point. You might roll round to Leverkusen, maybe having drawn or lost last night, and who knows what at the weekend, and you start scrambling for more consistency in your teams while trying to get rest into them as well. It's hard because we've sort of got used to his patterns of substitutions and rests here and there now, and it seems to be a couple on the same side of the pitch, like Robertson and Tsimikas have been swapping, but it's been Gakpo and Diaz. And last night, them two starting sort of shocked me a little bit, because I was half expecting one of them to have the rest and one of them to get the Sunday. But it's been, I don't know, he seems to have handled everything that came to him like really well, I think, the manager. And he's obviously still got the Forest bone to pick in his own head, and he'll never not have that, because like it's just the way football goes sometimes. You know, Jürgen in his first couple of seasons had the odd game like that, and it must just be frustrating, but I think he's accepted it, moved on really well. Everyone's a part of it, really. You know, the way we used Szoboszlai and Jones last night was quite interesting. Both criticised at points in their time at Liverpool, but always there and really consistently, giving their best for the manager and the players around them on the pitch to help it be easier for them as well.
Yeah, and Gareth, one of the other sort of surprises you'd call it in terms of the team. Maybe it wasn't a great surprise in the end, but it was certainly one that was speculated before the game. Was the change around the keeper, because people didn't know whether he'd just sort of continue with Kelleher, because Kelleher is the cup keeper, or whether he would change. And he did go for Jaros in the end, and I think it makes sense in the end for him to do that. But also, like, the evidence of the performance from Jaros in the end, like, he must be feeling 10 feet tall walking around Kirby this morning, because he was fucking brilliant last night.
It was great, wasn't he? I mean, I think it did make sense. Like, can you imagine what the reaction would have been if Kelleher had played and got injured? You know, we've had that in the past where we've played players in, so-called lesser competitions, picked up injuries, and then everyone's absolutely fumed about the impact on the big ones. So, yeah, it made all the sense in the world to me that we wrapped up Kelleher for the night and put him in goal. And that save's outstanding.
So good, isn't it?
It's so, I saw it again this morning another couple of times, and I was like, I don't know how he's got to that, because he's like going the wrong way and then he's readjusting. It's almost like behind him. Banks, mate. And like, he seems sound as well, doesn't he? Do you know what I mean? And again, back to the idea that we've got sound lads at the club. I always like that. But you've put him in now. He's played a game. He's helped Liverpool win a game on the telly, a game that everyone's seen. And again, that means that, if at some point we do have to rely on him again for whatever reason, touch wood, no more injuries to Alisson and Gallagher, please. But there's a part of your mindset now that you're like, well, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if he did end up between the sticks, because he's clearly all right. You got the other fella coming in as well from Spain, so we're going to be well stocked. And I mean, you'd imagine though all of this is leading to Kelleher going, like. But right now, Kelleher has been sound in the Premier League games, the big games. Made all the sense in the world to put him in, and he did well, didn't he?
Absolutely. And Mike mentioned the Gakpo and Diaz sort of switching around before, Dan, and it's funny really, because they've probably been throughout the season the two hottest contenders for each other's roles in that Liverpool front three, because Jota before his injury was pretty much nailed down when Núñez was out of form, and Salah's been doing Salah things all season, but then it's those two who sort of start last night. Do you think the manager is getting to the point where, if Gakpo keeps scoring and Diaz keeps playing as well as he has been, and I know the goal scoring form sort of dried up a little bit from where it was at the first part of the season, but again, that's to be expected. Do you think he is going to have a bit of a headache with these two, the manager, or do you think it will just be that Gakpo is the man for sub appearances and cup appearances and that occasional bit of rotation here and there?
There's plenty of very important games for them both to get loads of starts. Like there's going to be a fortnight towards the end of this month and the start of next where they're going to play Real Madrid, Man City, Newcastle, Everton and then Girona, I think. So I'd imagine that maybe Diaz would start 3 and Gakpo would start 2, but it could be any 3 and any 2. Just depend on what, shape they're in at the time and who else is going to be starting and how that then impacts that choice. I think you can often tell with Gakpo, and I thought it was the case last night from the first 5 or 10 minutes, like which one of them you're going to get. If he starts fairly quietly and he's maybe not done something brave on the ball yet or whatever, I think he can often have one of his quieter performances then. But I thought from the get-go yesterday, he just looked like he fancied it. And I don't know whether he maybe looked at Lamptey and thought, I can win the physical battle with you. Never mind then do really good things when I'm on the ball and stuff. But I think when you feel like he's playing well, or the games where he seems like he's really taking advantage of his frame, he's massive and he's really wide as well. Especially when he played up front last year, sometimes you would think he sort of manages to look small sometimes. Like, you're like 6'3". I don't really get how you're doing that. But like he did it at Milan brilliantly, where he starts wide, would stand the fullback up, and then carries it at them. And that's really intimidating if you're the defender because you've got this massive fella running really quickly at you. It's really hard to deal with. And from early on yesterday, I thought he just looked like I'm gonna put myself about physically here, and then absolutely backed himself with the quality which all of us have seen often enough to know that is there. He was really brave and like sensibly selfish on the ball as well. I don't know whether he'd passed the one to Szoboszlai, hadn't he, just before he just thought, well, I'll just kick it out at the goal for the second one, and it went in. So maybe he kind of realised, actually I should just back myself a little bit more.
He's good at it and hard as well.
He really is.
He really hits it.
But also, I think he's very good at taking advantage of people giving him opportunities. And my God, did Brighton do that? Like I know that he beat Lamptey to the ball, and that's like the error for the goal. But like Van Hecker just shows him where to move and where to shoot, and the keeper's left a bit of a gap as well. Like it's really bad all around from them. But you've still got to do your own job really efficiently to take advantage of it. So he's a very smart player, and having the both of them is just a huge boon to the rest of the squad. I liked that he didn't play him up front though. Yeah. When you saw the lineup, I think he was probably the most obvious one to play as the number 9. And maybe Szoboszlai's on the right or Jones is on the left or something like that. But I like that he's just gone, you're not a striker. Because I think when he's played his best football for Liverpool, when he came in, he had a few good games as the striker, but not for a long time really, I don't think. And he's just decided, no, you play on the left and everyone else will shift around you so that we can get the best out of you. I think that's a really good way of getting him in rhythm and giving him a bit of confidence that when he does play, whether it's off the bench or as a starter, just do what you naturally do and you're going to be fine.
And that's another thing, Mike, that I think Slot has almost learned from Klopp. And I remember Klopp coming out last season and sort of almost criticising himself really for how he'd complicated Gakpo's role by just basically exploiting his versatility and playing him all over the park. And we obviously saw Gakpo in midfield and things last season. Never felt like he had a home in any one position really. Whereas Slot this season has been, very clear. It feels like Gakpo has played, very little minutes at any other position. Maybe a little bit of number 9, but even then I think it was probably left-sided in a 2 with Núñez against West Ham. It just feels like the manager has gone, you are a left winger, and he's prepared to be a little bit more versatile with Diaz in terms of him playing more off the right last night.
Yeah, there was a couple of times last year I think as well from necessity where we sort of had to do it. I think Arsenal in the Cup, I think he starts down the middle, Gakpo, if I'm right, and then at half time they switch, don't they? And I think Núñez might even go left or Diaz goes right or whatever. While we were in the time where we had no Salah last year, we've seen a little bit of Diaz moving around the pitch more. I think maybe that's where Slot thought, well, as Dan's just said there, I want to keep Gakpo where I think he's best, and I'll move everyone else around him to get the best out of us. And it's only benefiting us because he's clearly settled in that role for the Netherlands. He's played brilliantly for them at times in competition. Was the World Cup in 2022, wasn't it, where after we signed him, and I think he does well in that competition. We sign him and sort of ask him to do a little bit more whilst also playing really terribly at the time he's coming in to play with us. And you see him now after he's settled, he's got that sort of just the confidence in himself now where he's like, oh, I know what I'm doing here now actually. I don't need to be back post and throwing people out the way winning headers, which he's very capable of doing, but it almost feels like he's thinking, oh, I should be doing that, but it's gone when he's realising he should be doing it, whereas on the left wing, the ball's into his feet. He's getting it, he's either laying it off to a better player or just taking it at pace, as Dan says, at defenders who probably don't know what to be doing, and I don't think I would either, to be honest. But I really enjoyed seeing the fact that he's sort of took his chance now, where he's had the manager saying to him, look, I'm going to play you there. And as you mentioned, it's not like Jürgen never ever did. It's just that maybe they thought there was other way around, getting home for us back then, where he played a little bit at number 8 here or there. I think he was at United the other year, the 7-0, where he plays quite well down the middle, and he takes it on the half turn a little bit, and you can sort of see why they want to do it more in some games maybe, but I think he feels a lot more comfortable where he is now, and you're seeing it in his performance, and having the trust of everyone else around you, and the trust in yourself more than anything, really, to know that you can take the chances. I think the first one last night, I'm wanting to roll it, either shoot or roll it quicker than what he did, and then he didn't. And he saw the chance goes, but then you're seeing that he just, as Dan said, he just thought, well, I'll hit this, shall I? And I'll hit it dead hard, and no one's getting in the way of it.
Yeah, and Gareth, it's a funny one with Gakpo, really, because I think he did struggle at times with his confidence last season. He feels like another one of them this season where he's just benefited from having like a consistent role. And I think it comes back to that trust element that Mike mentioned there, where the manager clearly trusts him to perform in that role. He's starting to, I think, trust himself and back himself in that as well now. And I've sort of compared him to Gravenberch a lot this season, because he feels like the other one who's now getting a consistent role, is sort of having a rhythm within that. And Gakpo is obviously not playing as many minutes or as many games as Gravenberch is, but I think it's just that consistency of role which is seeing him really take an upward trajectory this season.
Look, it's not just that as well. He's playing for a different manager and a different set of coaches, and we've heard enough from the players now that there are more meetings. It's done in a different way to Klopp, which we can all see on the pitch as well. So maybe they're benefiting from that as well, because for me with Gakpo, you could always see the potential. But I think Dan said earlier, there were times where very early on in games you would think it's just not going to happen for him today. He's trying the same trick over and over again that isn't working. The defenders are onto him. And you could almost see his head drop a little bit. And I thought it was really important last night, albeit against an opponent that, you'd expect them to dominate physically, but use your physicality, because that's been an annoyance for me with him at times. You look at when we lost to Forest. He could have took the fella out on the halfway line, and he almost like ushers him through. And next minute it's led to Forest scoring. And okay, it's a little bit poor to blame an individual in a team sport, but nevertheless, I am, and I was fuming. I was like, why didn't he just take them out there? The size of your lad, you know what I mean? I'm there on the cop giving it the pure moaning old fella after that one, like. So. Yeah, it was good to see him do that, and I wondered, have they had a word with him along those lines and said, like, just impose yourself on a match a bit more. Like, you don't have to be nice when you're playing footy. Do you know what I mean? You've got the tools not to be. And equally, nothing wrong with blasting balls when you are more than capable of doing so. So they felt like quite old school goals to me, and more of that, because, like, there is a little bit of footy these days, I think, where it's almost like overcoached, do you know what I mean? And like, I can remember talking about it on here, but about almost they're encouraged not to shoot, and because you're creating this better chance that will definitely lead to a goal. It's nice to see him shooting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and Dan, Quansah was probably the one who you'd say struggled the most as the game wore on last night. He's at fault for the second goal, I believe it is. He's still just 21 years old, and I think that's like one of the important things to point out. And he's a little bit out of the rhythm of games at the moment, so I don't think there's any concern there long term. But I'm interested to know how you sort of analyse his performance from last night.
I thought he was fine for 75 minutes or whatever it was. And Liverpool in the first half had played the way out of the really high Brighton press quite impressively. That's actually what I really liked about the goalkeeper. Obviously the save was amazing, but he was really brave on the ball, and he was keeping it short, and it would be really easy to just think, we first started, I'm just going to ping it and we'll reset from there. So I thought that was really good, and Quansah was part of that, and he got that wrong for that first goal. Just made the wrong choice by turning backwards. The pass sort of to his diagonal front right was on. And I guess he tried to do a bit of a safer thing, but just didn't really know where Welbeck was and makes a hash of it. And then I thought his head really went. He just couldn't keep the ball after that. I think we kicked off and he tried to play like a 20-yard one forward and just gave it right away again. It was like, oh, you could have been safer then. Just, try and settle yourself back down. And I saw people like either criticising the manager sometimes or just saying that the manager taking him off might have been, this bad decision in the long run because it'll knock his confidence and stuff. But you just got to win the game. Yeah. And at that point, he was giving the ball away, and he was a bit of a hindrance. And that's not because he's not a good player or anything like that. It's just he'd made an error. He hasn't played in a while, and he probably then is shitting himself, thinking, "Oh God, I was doing all right there, and now I've done this, and everyone's going to talk about it and all that sort of thing."
And by the way, if we lose the game, I'm sure it'd be far worse confidence-wise as well.
So they did the right thing to take him off, and then I actually thought it was vindicated by the fact that Conate got immediately spun and took Welbeck down, because I think if that was Quansah, who's significantly more slight than Conate, he might have just been away. And then, who knows what happens from there. But if it goes to 3-3, he's thinking, God, the entire thing is my fault. Even the second goal, it's really unlucky. Yeah. But I don't think he ends up on the deck trying to block it if he hasn't made the first error. I think he would have just stood his ground and it hits him and it's fine. You get that sometimes, and you certainly get it with young players in probably, barring goal, the most pressurised outfield position on the pitch, where if you make what is, in the grand scheme of things, a small error, i.e. a slightly misplaced pass, there's a fair chance it ends up in a concession. The deflection
for the other goals off him as well, isn't it? So it's kind of like, you can imagine he's thinking, I just want the earth to open up and swallow me. And as well, there's, let's just say, what's the nice way to say it? There's been stuff off the pitch where he's been getting some criticism as well, hasn't there? So, you know what I mean? Like, maybe mentally. And look, the manager, greeted him off, didn't he? And was warm to him. So, I thought it was fine, and I thought how would you make that? I thought the criticism of the decision didn't make a lot of sense. You've got to win the game.
I think you can sell the substitution to him as, a positive in a way. Yeah. We recognised that your head went there. It didn't need to though. We gave you 10 more minutes because we didn't think, he's an awful player, we have to take him off. But you got in your own head about it. So maybe if the same thing happens next time, don't worry about what we think of it or whatever. You're doing the right thing. Just try and settle back down, do some easy stuff as soon as it happens. So I don't think he needs to be worried or anxious or anything like that today.
Yeah, and Mike, it's been a funny one with him over the course of the season, I think, because it's clear he's one of the ones who is having the biggest period of adaptation with the new manager, and of course he's sort of one of the younger players around the first team setup anyway, so it's to be expected. But I definitely got myself into a mindset where I sort of thought that he would be the new left-sided centre half, or almost like he'd become the Virgil van Dijk type project. And I don't mean that to say that he could be as good as Van Dijk, because I mean who will ever be as good as Van Dijk really, and who knows how good Quansah will go on to be. But I think actually you see more last night that Gomez looks like the two of them who's more trusted with the ball at his feet. And again, like Dan references, decisions from the manager paying off. I think that's another one that does pay off, because Quansah gets caught on the ball a couple of times later in that second half. I think he's broadly sound on the ball first half, but Gomez is absolutely brilliant on the ball. Like his verticality of passing, like how adventurous he was being on the ball. Like again, Dan had mentioned about us breaking Brighton's press. It felt like Gomez was one of the absolute key components of us being able to do that effectively.
Yeah, and look, that's years and years of not just doing it on the pitch in a match, but in training. Like the constant playing against that front three, by the way, in training must be a nightmare over the years that we've had. And look, he's had real bad luck, hasn't he, Gomez, with injuries, but he spent a long time at Liverpool. I think he's the longest serving player now. And he's shifted all around the pitch, left back, right back. I can't, until this season, I'd be guessing that with last time I can remember him playing centre half. But he's got the muscle memory of doing it. The thing with Quansah for me is he sort of burst onto the scene as this mad, calm, really good player. And he was getting thrown on Newcastle away when Matip gets subbed off, come back from injury himself, while the game's in the balance, we're losing. And he comes on and is trusted. He started in big games in the past and made mistakes. I think people will reference the United game. I think it was in the league last year, where he sort of passes it along the back and Fernandes scores that mad goal. But look, he's I think he had two. The manager had probably two options last night. He could have brought Konate on for someone else and sort of tried to wrap him up in cotton wool on the pitch, and get through that way maybe. But the more effective route was doing what he done, as proof in the pudding. Take him off, look after him. You know, it's a long term. You forget that he's 2021, and I think that's a large part down to how good he's been on the ball, and having Gomez next to him as well was nice to see them both really playing at centre half, and as you said, like looking after the ball, and this like have at least always having one. Imagine playing football next to Virgil van Dijk or Ibu Konate and or even Joe Gomez now, and just knowing, right, he's shown me what I should be doing, so I'll do that, and I'm capable and good enough to be playing alongside these players because I've done it on more than several occasions now. So like as much as head might have been spinning and still probably will be a little bit today, once all the dust settles from it, he should take a lot of confidence in the fact that I'm actually trusted to be a part of this squad, not just because injuries have got me a chance. You know, remember when Matip got injured last year? Yeah. He was proper cold and went, yeah, all I wanted is place in the team anyway, to be fair. He's a nice fella, but I want to play. And that shows you, I think, a lot about the lad's mentality. He'll be good enough and hopefully strong enough physically and mentally to put that behind him and just kick on again. Look, I don't think any centre-half peaks at 2021, do they really? So we hopefully got 8-9 years of him growing and becoming to the level that Virgil's at now. And if you get anywhere near that level, you're going to be some defender. And while you're doing that, playing next to him and others in the team we've got, you're learning from the best.
Yeah, and Gareth, we're into the quarter-final stage now, and City and Chelsea go out last night, which feels like a sort of big plus. We get Southampton away in the draw too. It feels like if you don't go out last night, you get to this point, and especially with a sort of kinder draw, you'd call it, in a couple of those teams who you'd see being tricky ties going out. It feels like you basically have to go and win it now, don't you?
Yeah, 100%. It's one of those competitions, isn't it, where if you go out early, you shrug your shoulders a little bit and say, okay, well, that's good for the squad and good for rest time and all the rest of it. But once you're in the last 8 and you're looking at 3 games and there's a trophy at the end of it, then of course you go for it. So I wouldn't expect anything else. And also I think, the manager will want to win something. We can do that in this competition all we want, but, there's a new manager through the door and he's had a great start, 12 out of 14 or whatever it is. But he'll want to win something. He'll want to put a trophy on the sideboard and, he's got a great opportunity to do that now. And I always say about this competition as well, we had a great time in it last year. We won it last year. And, for me personally, that was the first time I got to take my son to a cup final and what a cup final to go to. And he absolutely loved it at the time of his life. So I always say that, when you're having these conversations and you're doing down competitions, it'll be someone somewhere's first cup final. And, and there's never a bad time to see any trophy with red ribbons on it and a Liverpool player picking the trophy up in the air. So, you can bet your bottom dollar that if we get to Wembley, some of the people that have moaned about this competition will be wanting to go. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So, of course, you go for it now. And it's a bit of a pain in the arse going all the way down to Southampton, obviously. But it's a game that you would expect to win. And then when you're looking at the rest of the teams that are in there, I don't think there's really anyone to fear, is there? As you say, it's definitely a bonus that City have gone out, and it's definitely a bonus that we don't have to play Chelsea potentially in a final again. So yeah, you've got to go for it now.
Absolutely. And looking ahead to Saturday then, Dan, we're expecting much changes again in the sort of reverse order for both sides. From Liverpool's point of view, I guess it basically goes back to the team that the manager's picked for most of the season now, obviously with Núñez being the sort of lock-in option while Jota's injured in the number 9 role. Questions around, I guess, you presume that Tsimikas would go instead of Robertson for this one, and then maybe there's a question mark around Curtis Jones and Szoboszlai's positions, but beyond that, it feels like it picks itself. Yeah,
they're the only two probably. I think Robertson might well play this, and then Tsimikas will play against Leverkusen. Oh, right. He's played every European Cup game, hasn't he, so far, Tsimikas, am I right?
So, yeah.
So that just feels like he's for whatever reason settled on that. And I mean, aside from like the first 3 minutes at Milan or whatever it was, it's worked really well. And then in midfield, yeah, I guess he's got a decision to make about those two. McAllister hasn't necessarily played all that well. I think the last few times, don't think he had a great game against Arsenal last week. And he had the knock, didn't he, while he was away with Argentina in the international break, but he went anyway. So at some point there's going to be a game that he won't start. I know he didn't start the other night as well, but like in inverted commas, more important, i.e. one of the two big competitions game, that he doesn't start. So maybe that would be one of the next two or something, I'm not sure. But it certainly feels like he's got what he thinks is the team that he wants to pick the vast majority of the time. And maybe now we're just getting to the start of the bit where that begins to look a bit more fluid. Just because, in the first kind of 6-7 weeks, it was one game a week, or the second one it might have just been like that West Ham game or one of the very early European Cup ones that you can recover from if it doesn't go that well. Now it feels like this is the bit where they'll really have a plan, and they've probably already got an idea of who would play against. Like that Girona tie that I mentioned before, for example. Obviously, it depends how many points you get in the games before that. But all the conditioning people, all the sports science people that they've brought with them, who are these experts at managing injuries and making sure we don't get any of them.
I hope it says that on the door. Conditioning people.
Well, this is where they'll be planning for, I think. But I think Robertson might well get it again, and then Tsimikas in a week.
Yeah, Mike, are you expecting Robertson to go again in this one? Then I think that the Jones one for me probably solves itself to an extent. If you watch the first half against Arsenal, I don't think he looks quite as comfortable in that number 10 position, and that's to be expected because it's not a position he's played an awful lot of this season. I think you go with Szoboszlai coming back in for that one, and then maybe there is a decision for him to make around McAllister because it feels like he will just play football forever if you allowed him to, and the manager so far has allowed him to. Jurgen Klopp before that allowed him to. The Argentina manager's allowing him to. Maybe something has to give at some point.
Yeah, there may be a thing of looking after him a bit while we can, especially while we're getting good performances out of, Gravenberch, Jones and Szoboszlai in bits here and there. It was nice to have Gravenberch just get the complete night off last night. I'm not really too fussed. I don't think. I'm very happy with the way the team's going to look. Regardless, I think there's lots of rested players coming back in, and the style of the game last night is pretty much what I imagine the game will be again. They'll make changes, probably the same amount again. That'll come back in for them. So I don't think anyone's specifically got massive advantages over resting players here and there. I just think whatever team we put out at the minute, Salah gets I thought was going to get the night off. I was at 2-0 bringing him on. I was like, it's a bit mad this. But he just wants to play football like they all do, and look, I'd be fairly confident as long as if McAllister starts, then the idea is we look after his minutes maybe because we've got such depth at the minute where we've got lots of choices to be made and ultimately comfort in them players coming on. Really, we've seen Szoboszlai have good games and bad obviously at Liverpool, but we can trust him. No matter what, Gravenberch's been really brilliant this season, and you expect he gets the 90 or maybe depending on the game gets looked after a bit for Leverkusen if we're a couple of goals up. And the Robertson ones where I really couldn't say. I genuinely think that could be 50-50, and he's looked after the subs. Basically, I don't think has he done 90 minutes this season yet, Robertson? He comes off at Arsenal. I think the fullbacks are basically being looked after a bit. We've been making subs and looking after them in like 70 minutes plus most games. So he's looking after the players that he obviously is known that he needs to look after. But like I said before, I'm just quite relaxed. If McAllister starts at the weekends, I can't wait because I love watching him play football for Liverpool. But if he's on the bench, then he's going to be playing Tuesday. Is it we play Leverkusen? And he could be a brilliant sub to come off the bench. Same goes for Robertson or Tsimikas, really.
Yeah, and Gareth back at Anfield on Saturday, of course. And those who have a keen eye on supporter issues will have seen the Stop Exploiting loyalty banner going around a couple of the grounds recently. Part of the reason you're on today is to tell us a little bit more about that campaign. And you referenced sound people in the workplace. You're at a new workplace now, aren't you? Do you want to tell people more about that as well?
Yeah, so I've always been a keen supporter of what Spirits of Shankly do. Obviously, back in the day, it was formed around the situation with Hicks and Gillette. remains in place, remains doing good work, a lot of work that's unseen, not shouted about and not talked about as much as it should be, really. And that's partly why I've got involved. That's going to be what my job is, really, within the organisation, in terms of doing some communications for them. So, you know, social media, writing, perhaps podcasts, perhaps videos, all the rest of it, is the idea for me to get involved in things like that. And yet this Saturday against Brighton, before the game, we're going to meet at 1:30. It's where the food bank is, which is right by the corner of the Cop and the Kearney stand. We've got some Brighton fans coming down as well. And yet we're going to hold up the Stop Exploiting Loyalty banner, which has been organised by the Football Supporters Association. As you say, it's been round all the grounds in the country last couple of weeks. Spirit of Shankly have helped to hold that up against West Ham in the League Cup. It was across the divide against Arsenal in the last game, and Spirit of Shankly members even went over to Goodison Park and held it with Everton and Fulham fans before their game the other week. Now it's quite sort of low key, peaceful, but equally sort of making the point that, you know, every club this season, bar one, Palace, put the ticket prices up again. And also we're seeing quite a few clubs as well target concessions now. So, you know, younger fans, older fans are suddenly being asked to pay a lot more money for the tickets. We, as an organisation, and me as a fan, I don't think that's acceptable. I think that this rolling culture of we just put them up every year and you have to accept it. I think we do need to start to take a stand against that. And look as well, you know, I would point to the fact that, you know, previous solidarity between groups of fans across the country has worked. You know, so there is a cap remains on the price of away tickets, £30. That was off the back of fans coming together, campaigning, turning up at Premier League headquarters, lobbying MPs, whatever it might be. So it'd be great if, you know, people who do feel you are worried that they could be priced out of football, that their kids could be priced out of football, if you could come along on Saturday 1:30, the food bank, just help us hold up that banner, get a picture, show your support for it. It just all helps, because look, I know for a fact that boardrooms are watching, the Premier League as a collective for watching, and there's always a tipping point where they think, oh, maybe we need to do something there, or maybe we need to roll that back. You know, apathy is among supporters is something they're looking for. You know, if they see that and they think they can get away with it, they'll try. And we've seen that at our own club. You know, we ended up having to walk out, obviously, over £77 tickets. There was the Super League proposal. There's been plenty of stuff that suggests boardrooms and the Premier League as a collective don't get these things right all of the time. So, and this is one of those times. So yeah, if people could get down and support what we're doing, that would be fantastic.
Absolutely. Make sure you get down and support that. Support Spirit of Shankly in general as well, and support Gareth in that new role there. Nice one to Gareth for coming on to talk about that today and to chat to us about the Reds as well. Nice one to Mike. Nice one to Dan. Nice one to Green King Sport for sponsoring us, of course, on the show throughout the course of the season. And nice one to you for listening. Up the Reds.